Hey YouTube! This morning we're going to see how a modern, pre-seasoned Lodge cast iron skillet stacks up against its counterpart that's been machined, and then also how it stacks up against a vintage Lodge of the same variety. Enjoy! Good morning, YouTube. It's time to do a little bit of a comparison. So we've got three iron skillets here, all made by the same manufacturer, but in vastly different decades with vastly different mindsets. And we're going to do a comparison. So first up is what you would buy in the store today. Brand new Lodge pre-seasoned skillet. I believe this one is a 10-inch. The second is the same size, but it's my old 3-notch Lodge from the 40s. And the third is another modern Lodge. However, this one, the inside has been machined. I machined the inside of this with a drill and a flap disc to knock down all of the very porous and raised bolts that are in this modern one. As you may or may not be able to see, this has a very textured surface. The reason for that is that Lodge needs to be able to pre-season the skillets to sell them these days. As you can see, this one now is not nearly as rough. So, why does Lodge need to preheat or pre-season skillets, or why do they? Well, the fact of the matter is, American consumers have really gotten out of touch with how to cook with cast iron, how to care for cast iron. You know, we live in kind of a throwaway culture, and you know, that just, it is what it is. I certainly don't blame anybody for that, but that's just not really how I choose to live my life. And so I like cooking in iron. I like the idea that you know, this pan here was built in the 40s, and one day my great-grandchildren will own it, and it'll still work just as well for them as it does for me. I like that I've created no waste, and that makes no mention of even the amount of iron that you get into your foods, which is a video we'll do later, talking about how you know, a large chunk of the American population these days is iron deficient, and cooking in cast iron is a great way to maybe, you know, get a little extra iron in your diet. Well, anyway, we are going to make some French toast. Now, I made my custard last night. It's been sitting in the fridge. So we've got our pieces of bread soaking in custard. Now, one of the keys to making really good French toast is to sit your bread out the night before. Stale bread soaks up more custard and doesn't fall apart in the pan. Another thing we've got going is we have all the skillets preheating over medium-low heat. And as you can see right away, look at the sheen that's in this vintage pan. All those iron pores opened up and allowed that nice seasoning, which in this case is bacon grease, to come out and play. Now, I seasoned this modern Lodge as well, and granted it hasn't been seasoned as well as this vintage one, because I don't use it as much, but it has got a seasoning layer. Now, this modern pre-seasoned skillet, as you can see, is still very dry. It's not, I mean, it's, at least this machine one's not bone dry. It's got a little coming up, but this off-the-shelf one here is just, I don't know, not looking too good. So what we're going to do is we're going to preheat all the skillets And then I'm going to chuck some butter in all of them, and each one of them is going to get its own piece of toast. And we're going to see which one is the most non-stick. All right. Let's get it going. Ooh. I'll let these sit for potentially too long. Man, that smells good. I like to put some cinnamon and some nutmeg in my custard, my French toast. Makes it kind of Christmassy. There we go. Managed to do that without making any big messes. So we're a couple minutes in, I just wanted to show you with the modern skillet. I'm actually kind of impressed. Despite the rough textured surface, it appears that with enough fat, it doesn't matter very much. I'm not getting very much in the way of stickage. I mean, actually pretty much none over here. Now granted, I'm getting nothing on my vintage pan either, and it's much easier to push things around. Let's see how the machined one does. About the same. We'll check back in again in a few minutes. Went ahead and flipped one in each pan. Go ahead and flip this next one. This is in the Modern Lodge. Gotta say, not bad. There's the vintage pan. Perfect, as expected. And machine finish. Just as good. We'll keep going here. I like my French toast a little bit crunchy. One thing that's interesting to notice, that I just noticed, is if you look at the textures, you can see that this one, and this could have a lot to do with the burner size, but the inside of this is a lot darker than the outside, where on this guy it's more even front to back. Same back here. So I'm thinking it's either burner size or it's iron thickness, and maybe the modern pans take a little longer to preheat It could be true, I don't know. Should be an easy fix though. Just scooch them around here. Shouldn't have any more problems. But, rotate this one. We're finishing up. Yes, I like my French toast burnt. But as you can see, and I have to admit, I'm pretty surprised by this. The modern pan did just fine. It doesn't have quite the, I don't know, the finesse feel to it that you get with the vintage pans. But you know, like when I push the scraper across here, it's nice and smooth, and it doesn't sound rough and nasty. Where this sounds very barbaric. But I mean, this is all very subjective, and you may not care very much about that. And so, no real complaints. So, what did we learn from this whole experience? Well, admittedly, I have to say that I was kind of impressed with the modern Lodge in terms of the way that it kept up with the vintage in the non-stick properties. But I think the main reason for that was I used quite a lot of butter. And so if I'm just thinking about this sort of conceptually, if you think about, you know, the surface of the iron being nice and flat, like the old vintage pans, you're not going to have, you know, you basically just need a thin film to make things not stick to it. Where if you had a really bumpy and porous pan, if you use a lot of oil or a lot of butter like I did, you sort of fill those holes up and level out the surface, almost like you would on, you know, if you had an old sheet, you know, a car that you were restoring and you had a bunch of rust and you had to knock all the rust out and then you build it back up with body filler and you smooth it out. And so I think just in terms of the non-stick properties, I think if you use enough fat, I think you're pretty much good to go, even with a modern skillet. The drawbacks, as I see them, is first of all the weight. Now, as you can see, I'm not a small guy, and the weight's not really a big problem for me. I will say though that at times it's an inconvenience. So there will be certain instances, like if I'm using a bigger pan, one of those big like 15-inch Lodge pans, that weighs enough that I can't really effectively maneuver it with one hand. I can, but I can't do, you know, real precise movements. It's sort of clumsy. Where with a vintage pan, I can always operate all of them one-handed without a problem. And that just comes back to there's less total mass. The second thing is, I don't know, I enjoy the collectible nature of the old pans. I like the vintage style, and I like the smooth surface. I like that when I run a spatula over it, it, you know, just glides and makes that nice little shh, rather than, you know, like I'm running it across sandpaper. So I don't like that as well either. And then of course there's the, you know, the rarity aspect. So, you know, if I stumble upon an old Griswold skillet that, you know, they didn't make a whole lot of, and I can say that I have one and not everybody does, I mean, that's kind of cool in and of itself. But at the end of the day, if all you want to do is cook, if you don't want to collect, then you can use a modern pan. I still like the machine finish on the new modern stuff, and it's not that hard to do. I'll make a video on that later. But I prefer the smooth finish. But realistically, with enough fat, you really don't need it. It's not a necessity. It's just a convenience. So, there you have it. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that comparison. I hope it was enlightening. It certainly was for me. One thing that I forgot to mention and that I figured out or remembered after I was done filming is that the rough surface on the Modern Lodge does make it a lot more difficult to clean as well. If you do happen to burn food onto it, or even in this instance where there wasn't a lot of stuff, it tends to fall down into the little, holes created by the porous texture or the rough surface texture, and is a little bit harder to clean. Certainly not impossible, but it's just a little more inconvenient. And then the same goes for when you're reseasoning. If you use the paper towel method like we all do, that rough texture tends to tear the towel easier, and you end up with lint and crap in the skillet that you really didn't want. At the end of the day, what it really comes down to is you're trading nuance for nuance. And, you're trading the convenience of being able to just go to the store and buy the skillet that you need at a pretty affordable price. I'm not dogging on Modern Lodge. They're just following the market. They know what people are paying money for these days. And, you can go to the store and you can get Lodge skillets in a variety of sizes and shapes, and they've got griddles and grill pans and everything you could need. And you can get it at, really reasonable prices, a lot cheaper than you're going to pay probably for a good condition old vintage pan. However, you trade that convenience for, say, the convenience of cleaning, or the convenience of seasoning, or the convenience of the weight, being able to, move it around easier and, take it in and out of the oven with less stress. So, at the end of the day, it's just what you prefer. If you're somebody who doesn't have a lot of time and you want to get into cast iron cooking, okay, get yourself some Modern Lodge stuff. Get a nice seasoning going on it, learn how to care for it, learn how to cook in it. Make sure you always preheat the skillet well, and make sure you're using lots of fat, as we demonstrated in the video. But, if you're somebody like me and you've got a little extra time and you like going and hunting through flea markets and antique malls and just, you find it enjoyable, then, vintage might be the way to go. I know it is for me. I prefer it. So, well, leave a comment below. Let me tell me what you think. And if you like these videos, leave a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll keep making them. Take it easy, YouTube.